slide deck for this specific presentation in the chat if you want to open that up and follow along at your own pace. And so the discussion that I am going to kind of facilitate for us today, there's a hands-on component as well where we're going to be doing some exploration of materials, is about the Modern Classrooms project. And so the Modern Classrooms project, not projects, is not a series of projects or something that you do. It's more of a framework or an instructional model that is research-based and has been proven to be pretty effective, especially in Title I schools, to really support students who might need some extra help in learning. And so the goal for today is to learn the basics of the Modern Classroom model and then explore some exemplar units. There's lots and lots of ways to implement this model into your classroom. You may or may not be implementing elements of it already, but we're just going to do a super high level overview today. And so what I want to do is actually begin with a challenge. And so this challenge is quite familiar to all of us, I'm sure. 26% of eighth graders in large city public schools are proficient in reading. Only about 27% are proficient in math. 21% of high school students are considered chronically absent each year. And a lot of those are for legitimate reasons and often really heartbreaking reasons. And then 16% of teachers leave Title I public schools each year just because of the unique challenges that come with teaching and learning and the opportunity for leadership in Title I public schools. And so in not just Title I public schools, but schools in general, there's often this one-size-fits-all traditional direct instruction approach that teachers use, that most of us are taught in as teachers in teacher preparation programs, that doesn't really serve actually all students and their needs. What I like to say is that in education, the word differentiation is the most overpromised and under-delivered on phrase, because we like to talk about it often, but we actually don't walk the walk when it comes to differentiation. So again, the challenge of traditional direct instruction, we often have a very diverse group of students in our classroom, right? There's a good chunk of them who are on grade level and consistently present. There's a good chunk who are usually absent, sometimes chronically absent, again, for often legitimate and heartbreaking reasons. And then we have a good group of students who may or may not be below proficient in math and English, students who may need extra supports because they have IEPs, 504 plans, or are emerging bilingual learners who just need some extra support that might be missed when we are in front of the classroom and we can't really go to the one and we have to kind of teach to the 24 or so, which is a decision that often we as teachers are making. And so that often leads to a feeling that we as a teacher can't really meet all of our students' learning goals. And so we end up feeling kind of like a failure in our practice. And then that ultimately contributes to some teachers leaving the profession as well, because educator effectiveness is not something that is really felt or seen on a personal level. And so this approach, it's not really approach, it might be actually kind of just new language for what you are already doing. A lot of it is just things that have been talked about for years now. So the Modern Classrooms project basically came out of Washington, D.C. Title I public schools, where some teachers were noticing that their traditional one-size-fits-all direct instruction approach was just not working, and I'm sure has not worked with fidelity for all of us. And so what they decided to do was come up with this new instructional model that really prioritizes educator effectiveness and learner understanding through three main pillars: blended instruction, self-paced structure, and mastery-based grading. If you walk away from this presentation with anything, it's these three pillars that make up the Modern Classrooms project instructional model. So blended instruction is basically where you are providing students with videos of your sort of direct instruction piece that students can watch and rewatch at their own pace at any time. Speaking of their own pace, they're learning on a self-paced structure, because not all learners learn at the same pace. And then ultimately, we're not passing on students due to compliance or completion. We're really making sure that they pass these mastery checks, or what you may already be implementing called exit tickets, to make sure that they have mastered previous content before moving on to the next. And so I have a quick 6-minute video that I want to show you to let you see this model in action in the classrooms of those teachers who initially came up with this model. So let me go ahead and optimize for video clip and then share sound. And then
hi, Angel. How are you? Good. Nice job, Mr. 6.10.
So one of the toughest challenges students face when they walk into classrooms is they feel tense. They're worried about being put on the spot, especially if they're behind or don't understand the skill. When they come into our classrooms, they know they're picking up where they left off. We're seeing students' anxiety levels drop and their commitment and desire to master content increase.
So I want to shout out Nathaniel and Will. They came on their own time. They got some videos going and they are ahead of pace.
Eastern High School is located in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Being 100% free and reduced lunch, our students come to us with varied levels of academic performance.
When I came to Eastern, I was sort of shocked with how broad the variety of learning levels was. We have students who have experienced a ton of trauma, who are behind on certain skill sets, are ahead in certain skill sets, have different subsets of experience when they go home. I quickly found out that my traditional model of teaching was not actually effective. So at that time, I realized I needed to make a shift, and I wanted to start by getting rid of the lecture at the beginning of my class. I'm gonna get started today with revision, so Santana and Jamie, just see me in the back real quick. The instructional model that I started implementing, there are 3 components: blended learning, self-paced structure, and mastery-based grading. What you would see today is really a controlled chaos environment. You have some students starting a new lesson, watching an instructional video, taking their guided notes. You have other kids working on actual lesson assignments, collaborating on whiteboards, really problem solving. And then you'll see other students working on exit tickets to achieve mastery.
I like Mr. Furr's class because it teaches you independence. For every lesson, we start off with a video, and then during the video, we have to take notes. Mr. Furr, he does the videos himself. You'll hear his voice every time you watch a video.
In today's lesson, we're going to focus on finding our local maxes and mins.
I love it actually. You get to pause it, stop, and then go back and be able to rewatch the lesson over again until I fully understand and grasp the strategies and formulas.
Once they're done watching that instructional video, they transition to some type of assignment or activity.
That's it for A, right? Mm-hmm. And then we already found the derivative. And now say find the rate of change in the weight of the oil.
Everyone learns different, so you may be on lesson 5, someone may be on 3. It all depends on how you work. It's better than in a regular class where everybody has to stay on the same thing. The students help each other. So if you ahead, you might can help someone that's behind.
Oh, okay, so after you get 9 over 4, you gotta divide the whole thing by 4. Okay. All right.
After that, there's an exit ticket.
So an exit ticket is like a mini quiz. It's just a couple questions at the end of the lesson that really succinctly measure the student's ability to execute the activities they learned. So when a student has mastered an exit ticket, they move forward. When they don't, they have a reteach. You're assuming that your Y is 0. And then they try a new exit ticket until they've achieved mastery.
Showtime. Did you get your exit ticket right? Well, your derivative is spot on.
So because I am not delivering a lecture, I'm now free to work with students for the entirety of the class period.
X equals 4.
Yes. Woo.
Real quick, just remind me, what do you have to argue? Who is more responsible for perpetuating the Cold War? I'm gonna meet with a few people on topic sentences first.
The video instruction makes me feel like I've been able to clone myself. Instead of needing to explain a concept and then re-explain the concept and then say it again, I'm giving the instruction on the video, which frees me up to work one-on-one or in small groups.
Does your topic sentence directly answer the essay question? No, it doesn't.
I like it a lot. I never feel like I'm being rushed or feel like, oh, I already know this. Like, why am I going over this again? I always feel like I'm being challenged.
I have a really accurate pulse check of where my students are. So-and-so is on 6.9 and they're about halfway through because I haven't seen an exit ticket yet, whereas another student has advanced to 6.10 and I can even lean on that student to explain something to their peers.
Okay, so you're only gonna use 2 quote explication charts. Your 2 strongest ones.
I think it helps with your time management. A couple days ago, I had to stay after school to get my work done because I was slacking a little bit. When you miss a class, you can watch the video at home to catch up.
Part of the reason this format works so well is we have a lower than average in-seat attendance rate. In a traditional format, once the teacher delivers that lesson, they're moving on to the next lesson the next day, and they don't get an opportunity to go back over it.
I've had students who, sadly, in a traditional classroom, they simply would have failed the quarter due to their number of absences for legitimate reasons and often sometimes really heartbreaking reasons. With this way of teaching, that student can come really with more of a fighting chance and ultimately pass a quarter.
In our model, if a student is experiencing distress and needs emotional support, it doesn't disrupt the larger classroom environment. I'm able to pivot and work with that student, discuss what's going on, while the other students are able to access the content and flourish.
You have to do 10, then put the parentheses in the calculator too.
I did.
Oh, you got it. It's supposed to be a positive, girl.
Okay, so hopefully that video kind of gave you a good taste of what that might look like in practice. So we're gonna skip that. So the Modern Classroom Project has now shifted away from being just like a small community of practice among those Washington DC public school teachers into like a nonprofit organization where their kind of flagship element is this free course called Modern Classroom Essentials that you can go through at your own pace through video and other structures for you to get a comprehensive overview of what it means. Specific tools and strategies you can use to begin implementing this model, and then a certificate. So let me go ahead and copy the link to that free course and put it into the chat for you. There you go. I'm actually almost done with the free course myself. I have not yet begun to implement this model, but it's a shift that I want to make as we get back into the classroom this fall, because we have a kind of a fresh start, so to speak. So again, a review of the model. The model has three main components: blended instruction, where you're kind of cloning yourself via video. There are best practices of how to make an actual rigorous and engaging video that the free course goes over as well. So you don't have to like just make one from scratch. There are like parameters that are research-based and best for kids. Self-paced structure, where students are learning at their own pace. This does not necessarily mean that students are working at the same thing at their own pace, but within your lessons and even within your tasks and activities, you have different tiers of rigor and of volume that students can access depending on their learning level. So you might have what the Modern Classroom Project likes to do is they have teachers who are providing lessons and activities that are must do, and then should do, and then aspire to do. So students kind of self-regulate and self-select what is kind of the best fit for their unique circumstance. But the must do is for everyone, and that kind of covers the most essential learning that is going to be covered on the exit ticket. And then students can do the should do and the aspire to do if they're more advanced or want to challenge. In the 5E scientific model, we call that the extend, right? And then mastery-based grading, of course, students do not move on just because they complete or comply, but because they really show mastery on those mini exit tickets or mastery checks. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to give us some time to do some hands-on exploration of the exemplar units. So I will put the link to the exemplar units in the chat. We might have to truncate the duration for this because I do want to give us a chance to reflect collectively. I will give us 5 minutes. Yeah, let's do 5 minutes to explore the exemplar units. So the page looks like this, where you can select exemplar units by grade level, sorry, not by grade level, by subject. I'm assuming most of us will go into the science area. The introductory units are pretty helpful as well if you want to know like how exactly you frame this for students at the beginning of the year. So let's take 5 minutes to do some hands-on exploring of those exemplar units, the Modern Classroom units, and then we'll have a discussion. So I'll play the 5-minute timer there. I also posted the discussion questions in blue text here on the slide so that you kind of have a heads up of what to look for and keep in mind as you're doing your exploration. Let's take 2 more minutes for exploration of the exemplar units. Let's take about 10 more seconds and then we'll reconvene to discuss. Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and come back to discuss these 4 questions that I have in blue text at the bottom of this slide here, that's on your screen as well. We don't necessarily have to go in order. Feel free to pick a question that resonates most with you and feel free to share as the spirit moves you. I do want to name also that 5 minutes for exploring those units was not enough. So it's a little bit of a contrived situation, but yeah, let's go ahead and discuss those 4 questions. Feel free to start.
I can start sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'll start. I'm kind of going out of orders. I really like self-paced structure. I like providing opportunities for kids to learn at their own pace. So I'd put that on the positive side of this type of curriculum. I took a deep dive into the human impact on the environment lesson plan and was looking at all of their resources. They created a Google site for lesson number 2. I guess the con for me, one of my pet peeves as a teacher or where there's room for improvement is when teachers call something an activity or a lab and it's really just a kid filling out a worksheet. So, you know, I really feel like whatever is being designed, whether it's self-paced or blended, has to kind of mix up what kids are doing. If they're just filling in worksheets nonstop, that's a problem. Where's the opportunity to look at a phenomenon, do a demo, do an actual lab or activity with your hands? And I think there was room for improvement with that particular lesson that I looked at.
Yeah, thanks for sharing and great observation.
I also kind of wanted to echo a little element of that in that a few of these I'm noticing that like the labs are kind of the optional or aspire to rather than the must-dos, and I think that that's like an equity issue if we're like putting that as like, oh, only students who are, you know, quote unquote advanced are doing the labs, then they're getting a totally different experience than the students who are quote unquote don't have the skill set, right? Whereas maybe we need to scaffold our labs better, that way those are must-dos kind of things if we are allowing for that self-paced kind of thing.
For sure. Thanks for sharing, Connor.
I think that and taking the lessons from distance learning that we had so far, I remember the students having a lot of resistance before the pandemic for it's kind of like a flipped classroom sort of. So they were very, very resistant with that type of instruction, and I think that with these I guess the pandemic kind of like shifted the things to the other side. So we have that leverage to implement this now that their minds are a little bit more on the side of, okay, we watch the video and then we do instructions. And but the only thing that I'm a little bit worried about is like class discussions, because if everybody's at their own place, then you are again, and it's an equity issue, because everybody is at their own in their own little island, and might make sharing a little like, or at least sharing with a whole class a little bit more complicated.
For sure. Thanks, Susanna, for sharing.
One of the questions, I mean, for at my high school, we don't have like one-to-one technology for students, you know? So it's like, for me, this wouldn't really be a possibility, because we have like maybe 2 or 3 Chromebook cards for 13 science teachers. So this would be something we could do maybe like at the beginning of a lesson or something like that. But if we don't have one-to-one technology, this definitely would not be a possibility. You know, because we can't really do the flipped classroom model. A lot of students don't. I mean, with distance learning and stuff they did, but they have to bring back that technology. We like got stuff, like we borrowed stuff from different companies and that we have to give back. So I just feel like in that case, like, you know, it wouldn't really work, and not every student has stuff at home to watch videos at home. You know, I just feel like that would make it really difficult.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Lindsay. I hear a lot of
well, I was just going to say, I wonder, because we're hearing a lot of negatives, and I know that's always kind of what comes up sometimes when you see like, oh my God, this would never work. But I wonder if it's something you could try like just for 6 weeks, just to see, you know, maybe it's not for every unit you do, but maybe there's that one unit, maybe you're just reviewing for the final or something like that, but just, you know, pick a little section. And I find when I do new stuff, that's usually better than say, I'm just going to make my entire class this, right? So then you can kind of tweak it to make it work. Because I mean, it does have its benefits. I mean, that was one of the things I saw in distance learning, was my kids who got to work at their own pace were just like blowing by everybody else. But of course, on the flip side, you got the kids who fall behind and you're trying to catch them up. But I think it has its place. I don't know if most of us would be ready to like, okay, in August, let's totally implement this. But it might be something you try for a 2-week unit, or maybe it's a unit that, you know, you want every kid to get to a certain point, but there's certain things you want them to get further on. We do need to wrap this up though, Hung. So you want any closing?
Yeah, let me go ahead and wrap this up really quickly. Thanks, Deborah. So yeah, to echo what you said just now, Deborah, actually, so if you are interested but a little hesitant to kind of implement it with fidelity, what you can try to do is maybe implement it backwards with one element at a time, starting with mastery-based grading, which doesn't necessarily require technology, and then maybe moving to a self-paced structure. And then finally, when one-to-one is available or technology is a thing at your school, then trying that blended instruction element. I do want to really quickly answer a frequently asked question, which is, given like the self-paced structure, you know, and everyone learning at their own pace, what does collaboration look like in a modern classroom? I think Susanna asked this, which is an excellent question. And so if anything, these questions that often come up of, can I do blank in a modern classroom? The answer to those questions are usually yes. And so what happens is students are not always on computers, and every lesson can have a different structure. In terms of discussions, what most modern classroom teachers do is they try to have like a daily academic conversation right after the do now or the warm up, for students to discuss things that are rather thematic or kind of abstract and related to the units driving questions or essential questions, so that everyone has access to those conversations. Or you might have like some kind of sorting activity, or have a discussion either at the beginning or like in the middle of the unit, where students know they have to prepare for that and must do the must-dos, so that they are set up for success there. A well-designed modern classroom doesn't have one kind of archetype. It can look like many different things. Every classroom is different, as you all know. So please find what works for you and feels authentic to you, most importantly. And any additional resources are at the end of that slide deck. So feel free to reach out to Kareem, the co-founder and CEO. You saw him in the video, or me, if you want to maybe work closely with me as we learn about this together. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Hung. I'm going to throw the feedback form in there as well. So